This is Gemara Baba Kama Daf Yud Beis, and we're holding on the top of Yud Beis Amar Aleph, the top line. Lebasar dinafak Amar lehu ula hachi Amar Rav Elazar afilu miyasmi. What's miyasmi? So we look at the top Rashi. Rashi, 2 lines from the top, is an easy reminder of the sugya that we're in the middle of learning. Says Rashi, Da'avda kimakarkoi dami. That an Eved is like Mikarka. What are we discussing? We're discussing if one has nothing else to pay for, or I should say nothing else, is one allowed to collect payment from an Eved or not? That is the discussion. And now we're learning that when they left Amar Ula, this is what Rav Elazar said, that you could collect from Avadim, even Meyasmi, even from the Yisoimim, you could collect Avadim. Amar Rav Nachman Ishtamit Ula. Says Rav Nachman, Ula, was Ishtamit. He didn't want to talk to me, and therefore he was nervous that he wasn't going to be able to collect. If you look at the second Rashi over here, the second line, Rashi comments, third one, Nishma v'imani v'yare, he was afraid, he held that Avadim are like Karka. And he was nervous, maybe I would slug him up, because he held that Avadim are like Karka. Again, if an Eved is like Karka, then it could be utilized in the payment of a loan. Payment of a debt, I should say. And even we're learning now from Yisaimim. Says the Gemara, Have Uvda ben Arda, there was a story in Arda, V'agvi deyani din Arda, they collected from Avadim. Have Uvda from Medisa, V'agvi, Rav Chana bar Bizna, Amdu Rav Nachman, Zilu Haduru. So said Rav Nachman, Zilu Haduru, go and return this Avadim. V'lo magvina luchula pandaichu. I'm going to go and I'm going to take away your mansions, even though we just quoted numerous sources that said you could, yes, collect from Avadim. Said Rav Nachman, nothing doing. You collected from Avadim, go return them. And if not, I'm going to go and I'm going to take away your houses. Says the Gemara, what's going on over here? Amnei Rav Nachman Ha'ula, Rav Elazar, Dayani din Ardai, Rav Chana bar Bizda. All of them held you could, yes, collect from Avadim. Mar, Kiman, Sfiralu, who are you holding like that you cannot? So Amrla, he responded, Amasniti Adan, I know about a Mishnah, the Tani Avimi, that Avimi has taught that what? Prosbal Chalal Karka. A prosbal works on land, but Veino Chalal Avadim doesn't work on Avadim. Metaltlin are nicknamed Ima Karka. Movable items you could acquire together with land. They non nickname im avadim, and they are not acquired with avadim. Meaning what? Meaning we're seeing 2 instances that an eved does not have a din of karka, but rather has a din of metaltlin, and that was the reason why Rav Nachman paskin that if you don't return the avadim, I'm going to take away your houses, as he held that the avadim have the status of metaltlin, not of karka, and therefore they cannot be collected from. And we continue. We're about 10 lines down. The first line is Ve'inan. Says the Gemara, Lema Ketanai. Maybe we should suggest that this din, whether an Eved is like karka, therefore could be collected from the payment of a debt, whether it's like mitaltlin and therefore cannot be. Let's say it's a machlokes tanoim. Explains the Gemara, Machar lo yavadim the karkais. So when he's selling Reuven, selling Shimon, Eved and karka, slaves and land. What's halacha? Hechzik v'avadim loikane karkais. If you made a chazak on the Eved, you don't acquire the land. But b'karkais, then yes. B'karkais, loikane avadim, both ways. Karkais u'metalton continues the brayso if one is acquiring land and movable items. Then hechzik b'karka, yes, kana metalton. B'metalton loikane karka. Finally, continues the brayso avadim u'metalton. Hechzik b'avadim loikane metalton. Metalton loikane avadim. So clearly, the brayso is holding that an Eved has a din of metaltalin. And that's why If you make chazaka on one Eved, you're not koine the metaltalin, because clearly it does not have a din of karka. If an Eved had a din of karka, then by making a chazaka in the karka, of course you'd be koine the metaltalin. Ve'hatanya, and we have a different brayse that says hechsik v'avadim, yes, koine metaltalin. So one brayse says you're not koine, one brayse says you are koine. My love suggests the Gemara that what is the machlaikas, what is the point of debate between these two braysos? Demar savar avodim kimarkar koidam, Yomar savar avodim kimakaltelayin dami. So says the Gemara, maybe that is the machlaikas, and the point that we're discussing is indeed a machlaikas tanayim. So Amar Rav Ika Breid Rav Ami. No, the kuli avodim kimarkar koidami. Really, everyone holds it's like karka. Tanya, that which the first brayse says, kana, that which the second brayse says, kana shapir. That which the brayse says that you could be kind of metalton via movable item, via making a kidney in the eved, that makes sense. It's din of karka. Tanya, like kana. The other brayse says you're not kind as, why not? Because be'ining karka dumya da'arim mitzuras biyehuda. That even though avadim in reality have a din of karka, still they cannot effect a kinyan on the metaltalin. Why? Because it only works if the karka is similar to Arei Mitzuras B'Yehuda, which is what, as Rashi points out, non-movable land. So it could have a din, as Gemara says, lo naidi, could have a din of karka, but the fact that it's movable will not allow you to perform a kinyan agav, that by being a chazaka on the eved, you'll acquire the metaltlin. Ditinan, as we learned in the Mishnah, we're 10 lines from the white lines. First word line is Ditinan. The chasim she'ein them achrayis are nicknamed in the chasim she'ein them achrayis. Items without achrayis, which are movables, are kind with items with achrayis. Bekesef, bishtar, ubechazaka. Minani mili amar chizkiya damar krav italem aviyim atanis rabbis lekesef. And that is where we learn that has to be similar to Aritzuras B'Yehuda, cities which are non-movable. Ika Diamri says the Gemara, a second lashon of Rav Ika, Dam Rav Ika, Breid Rav, the Kuli Alma of the Kimakal Talanda. The exact opposite. The first Eretz we said, everyone holds what? Avadim are like karka. Now the Gemara is saying that everyone is suggesting avadim is like metaltlin. Ve'odetani like kana shapir. The first where it says you're not kind, that makes sense because they're like metaltlin. Hadetani karka. The second braysa is ba'oiden alav, is when the eved is holding the movable items. Says the Gemara, v'chiyoiden alav ma'yhavei chatzer malachasi. An eved is a movable chatzer. So very good, he's holding the item, and therefore you would say that he could be koine agav himself because he's holding it via kinyan chatzer, but it's a movable chatzer. And the halacha is v'chatzer malachas. The last narrow line is loikana. Chitim abayim. If you're going to say no, the evid's not moving. V'amarava barava tokol shilam halik loikana amiviyashev loikana. Anytime. If you'd be mahalich, you can't make a kinyan. You can't even make a kinyan if you stand still. Says Marve Helchasa, you know when it could apply? Big kapois, if the evidence is tied up. Ask the Gemara, what about the Braisa that says if you make a kinyan in karka, you're kind of the avodim? How is that going to work? The first Braisa says you're not kind of. Hasam ba'oimdim b'teicha. There it's referring to where the eved is in the field. Says the Gemara, so the Braisa says you're not kind. It sounds like why? Because they're not standing in the field. So says the Gemara, according to the second lashon, evidence like metaltalin, everything is good. Why? Then it makes sense to differentiate whether the evidence is standing in the field because they have a status of metaltalin, and there's only a kinyan if the evidence is in the field. If an evidence is like karka, what do you have to actually be standing in the field? What's the kasha Amar Shmuel? But Shmuel has taught us 2 lights from the bottom. You base them at Aleph. Machlo Ezer Sadus Bas Medinas Kim Jechzu Bachs Mehem. Kana Kulam. If someone is acquiring 10 fields in 10 areas, by making a chazak on one, you acquire all of them. Says Gemara, even if an evidence has the status of metaltalin, still, why would you have to stand inside of it? What's the kasha? As we turn over to Yebezim Ebez, a Kaimalan, but we hold the loy be'inan tziburin. A machlek as how you acquire metaltalin, but we paskin, says the Gemara, that lamaisa, you do not need siburin, you do not need to actually be standing. The item does not have to be within the field. Elamai. So finally concludes the Gemara on the top line of Yebez Amid Aleph. Elamai is Alamai. What are you going to tell me? Shiny metaltalin denaidi. May metaltalin denolo naidi. So you're going to say there's a difference between the metaltalin moves. Achanani shani mikarkoi denaidi. Mikarkoi deloi naidi. Difference between a land that moves or not. Avda, slave is markoi denaidihu. Hasam sadina da'ara chadu. Whereas in the other case, all the land is considered one. In the case of Shmuel, that's why you make a kinyan on one property. You're kinda all of them. We continue 6 lines down. Yubeiz Amid Beis. The 2 dots quoting the Mishnah. Nachasim she'ein behem ne'ilah. Items that do not have me'ilah. Items that are not subject to deconsecration if you utilize them in the wrong fashion, etc. Says the Gemara, seemingly me'ilah hu delas v'hu mikdash kachi. It sounds like we're dealing with entities of Kodesh, entities of Kachim, but there's no din of Me'ilah. Says the Gemara, who holds of such an interesting dichotomy? Mantana, Rav Yechlan beKachim Kalim, talk about Kachim Kalim, which is not the highest level of Kachim, a lower level. V'alima Rav Yosei Aglili, who's Rav Yosei Aglili? Da'amar 8 lines down. Ma'moin Bailim hu, that what? Kachim Kalim is belong to the owner. Titania, as we learned in Abraiso, Malu B'Hashem. The rabbis Kachim Kalim, that what? Shehein Mimoinoi, different Rav Yosei Aglili, that Kachim Kalim are considered to be your own personal money. Ask the Gemara, really, Vatanam, but we learned in the Mishnah, HaMakdish Bechelka, if someone is Mekadesh Bechelka, we learned this in Kedushin. Someone is Mekadesh, a woman with his portion, Bein Kachay Kachay, Bein Kachay Galam, Makayin, Einoi Mekudashes. So if you're going to tell me, Lema Delek Rav Yosei Aglili, that according to Rav Yosei Aglili, the Kayin owns his Kachim Kalim, so why can't he marry an Isha with it? Says the Gemara, Filotem Rav Yosei Aglili, really could be Rav Yosei Aglili. Kiyama Rav Yosei Aglili. When did Rav Yosei Aglili say his din that the item Ki Amar Rav Yosei Aglili, when did Rav Yosei Aglili say his din that it's owned by the owners Mechayim? It's only while the animal is alive. Avlachar Shchita. Even Rav Yosei Aglili himself is maida that what? So we're learning over here that even within Rav Yosei Aglili, that's only going to be considered mamoin bailim, the kachim kalim, while the animal is still alive. Once the animal is shechted, then it's considered owned by the Beis HaMikdash, and the Kayhanim, when they get their different parts of the carbon, is getting it from the Beis HaMikdash. Asks the Gemara, Machayim Yamar, is this accurate? Does Rav Yosei Aglili hold that while the animal is alive, it is owned by the owner? Of Atanam, we learned in the Mishnah. Bachar, Bachar, let us sell pure when it's alive. And with as a mom, Chay v'shachet. And you could be mekadesh an isha with such a carbon, with such a bachar, this is only referring to al bachar. Bizman hazeh, that what? Since nowadays, obviously, there's no akrav, there's no karbanos, therefore, Kayhanim have a zechiyah on it, the Kayhanim have consider a part ownership in it, and that's why the Kayin could be Kaddish an Isha with it. Aval, says the Gemara, Bizman Shebeis HaMikdash Kayim, Techazi Lakrav Alai, that it would not to be able to be brought utilized in Kedushin. Why? It's not considered owned by the Kohen. And we asked on this, Brisa, Rav Nachman Umalu Mal Hashem, what do you do with the pasuk? L'Rav's Kachim Kalashem Manadir Seglili. Umishani, and Rav Nachman answered, what do we do with the pasuk? Mishani Ravina, excuse me. Bevachar bechotzars. I'll leave it there. Rav Shimon. Tamar and Bo Tamimim Yakrivu. That it says if they come tamim complete, if the animal comes from Chutzlar Eretz Yisrael, we'll bring it as a carbon if it comes complete. From here, we were medayik 2 lines to the bottom in Bo. If it comes in, but lechatchila you can't bring it as a carbon. So what's the kasha? Finally articulates the Gemara. If Rav basically held that while the animal is alive, it's considered mamayin bailim on the top of your gimel and aleph. Lishni, what should we have answered? Rav Yosef Glili, Harabanon. Says the Gemara, no, kasha, manas kahuna kamri. You can't bring me a kasha from a bachar. Kachim kalim is one thing. A bachar manas kuna is different. Why? Shiny manas kuna t'chikazachu b'shulchan gavayu kazachu. Manas kuna in particular considered to always have been gotten from the kohen from the Beis Hamikdash. Resei Glili's date is going to be only on kachim kalim that the bailim have a schos in it. Pick it up from the gufa on the next year. B'siyata dishmaya.